The sun dipped low over the cracked asphalt of Elmwood Street, casting long shadows that stretched like forgotten regrets across the quiet suburban block. It was supposed to be a day of laughter and wrapped gifts, but for little Emily Harper, 8 years old and wide-eyed with a confusion that no child should bear, it had unraveled into something heartbreaking. She sat on the curb, her small frame hunched over a lopsided birthday cake smeared with too much pink frosting. The single candle had long since flickered out, its wax pooling like a tear on the paper plate balanced on her knees. Her party dress, a faded blue thing with ruffles now dusted in dirt, hung limp from her shoulders. No friends had come, no family gathered, just the empty sidewalk and the distant hum of traffic mocking her solitude. Emily's tiny fork scraped against the cake, scooping up a bite that tasted more of salt than sugar, her own tears mixing in. Her mother had promised a big celebration, whispered it with that weary smile just yesterday, but the morning brought shouts, a slammed door, and then silence. Dad's truck was gone from the driveway, and Mom hadn't come back from wherever anger carried her. Emily didn't understand the grown-up words like debts or running out, but she felt the ache of being left behind, like a toy discarded in the gutter. She poked at the cake again, whispering a birthday wish to the empty air. "Please, someone come." That's when the rumble started, a guttural growl that vibrated through the pavement like thunder rolling in from the horizon. It wasn't the familiar purr of neighborhood cars. This was deeper, rawer, a symphony of engines awakening from slumber. Emily froze, fork midway to her mouth, her heart pounding in sync with the approaching roar. Headlights pierced the twilight, slicing through the dusk like golden blades. One by one, they multiplied, 20, 30, then more, forming a convoy that snaked down the street with purposeful menace. Harleys and choppers, their chrome gleaming under the fading sun, exhaust pipes spitting faint blue smoke that carried the sharp tang of gasoline and freedom. At the lead rode Ethan Caldwell, a man whose life had been forged in the fires of old wounds. 42 years old, with a salt and pepper beard framing a face etched by sun and sorrow, Ethan gripped the handlebars of his weathered black Indian chief. His leather vest, patched with the emblem of the Iron Vow, a coiled serpent around a broken chain, flapped against his broad chest. Scars traced his knuckles, reminders of a war half a world away, where he'd lost his best friend to a roadside blast. That loss had birthed a promise, one etched into his soul during a rain-soaked night in a distant foxhole. "If I make it back, I'll watch out for the ones left behind." He'd buried it under years of drifting, mechanic jobs, and the brotherhood of the road. But fate, that relentless rider, had a way of calling in debts. Ethan's crew followed like shadows, veterans, outcasts, men and women who'd chosen family over blood. There was Marcus, the burly ex-firefighter with a laugh like gravel, riding shotgun on a customized Softail. Beside him, Lena, sharp-eyed and tattooed, her nursing scrubs traded for riding leathers after too many shifts in underfunded ERs. They'd been en route to their annual ride for fallen comrades when Ethan's phone buzzed with a tip from an old contact. A single mother in crisis, her kid alone on a birthday that echoed too many regrets from his own past. "It's nothing," he'd muttered to the wind, but the pull was there, that ancient vow stirring like an engine revving to life. The convoy slowed as they spotted her, the girl on the curb, cake in hand, eyes round as saucers. Engines idled to a throaty purr, the air thick with the scent of hot metal and oil. Ethan killed his motor first, the silence sudden and profound, broken only by the tick of cooling pipes. He swung a leg over the saddle, boots hitting the pavement with a solid thud that echoed his resolve. The others fanned out behind him, a wall of leather and loyalty, their faces softening at the sight of the child. Emily shrank back at first, clutching her plate, but Ethan's approach was measured, hands open, voice a low rumble like distant waves. "Hey, kiddo," he said, crouching to her level, his dark eyes holding a gentleness scarred men rarely showed. "That's some cake you've got there. Mind if I join the party?" She blinked, wiping her cheek with a frosting-smeared hand. "It's my birthday." "But nobody came." Ethan's jaw tightened, a flicker of old rage at the world's cruelties crossing his features. He glanced at the empty house behind her, the "for sale" sign crooked in the yard like a lie. Whispers from his contact painted the picture. Debts piling up, a family fracturing under pressure from shady lenders who'd circled like vultures. But this wasn't about money. It was about a promise, to protect the innocent, to stand when others walked away. "Well, that's about to change," he murmured, more to himself than her. He pulled a bandana from his pocket, clean and folded, and offered it like a truce. "Name's Ethan. These are my friends. We don't miss birthdays, not on our watch." Word spread through the crew like a spark on dry tinder. Marcus dismounted, producing a small toolkit from his saddlebag, and in minutes he'd rigged a makeshift table from a crate, lining up candles scavenged from who knows where. Lena knelt beside Emily, her voice soft as she asked about the cake's flavors, chocolate, vanilla, a dash of hope. One by one, the bikers gathered, their rough exteriors cracking into smiles. A grizzled vet named Tyler pulled out a harmonica, coaxing a melody that wove through the evening air, simple and soulful. They sang, off-key but earnest, "Happy Birthday," echoing off the houses, drawing curious neighbors to windows. Emily's laughter bubbled up, tentative at first, then free, as Ethan cut her a proper slice, his large hands careful. In that moment, under the emerging stars, the convoy transformed from a thunderous force into a circle of guardians. But Ethan knew this was just the spark. Whispers of trouble lingered, the creditors who'd driven her family apart, the corruption threading through local enforcers who'd looked the other way for a cut. His promise, long dormant, ignited fully now. For this girl, for the brother he'd lost, he'd ride into the storm. By dawn, the iron vow would mobilize, engines roaring not just for a party, but for justice, a redemption that bound them all, changing lives in ways the road ahead would test. As the cake dwindled and stories flowed, tales of rides through deserts and dawns, Ethan watched Emily's face light up, a quiet vow sealing in his heart, no one left behind, not tonight, not ever. The engines would roar again soon, carrying them toward battles of honor and heart, where loyalty proved stronger than any chain. The night air cooled as the last notes of the harmonica faded, leaving a hush broken only by the soft crackle of a nearby street lamp flickering to life. Emily's cheeks were flushed from laughter, the pink frosting now a badge of joy smeared across her chin. The curb had become a makeshift feast ground, with bikers sprawled on the grass in a loose semicircle, their heavy boots leaving imprints in the earth like anchors against the gathering dark. The cake was nearly gone, divided among calloused hands that passed plates with the care of ritual. Ethan sat cross-legged beside her, his leather vest creaking as he leaned back on one elbow, watching the child's eyes sparkle under the glow of scavenged tea lights, now flickering in empty cans. "You know, kid," Ethan said, his voice a gravelly murmur that cut through the quiet, "birthdays aren't about the number. They're about the promises you make to yourself. Like, this year, I'll be brave. A day or this year, I'll find my people." He paused, staring at the horizon where the last sliver of sun bled into purple twilight. His mind drifted to a foxhole in a forgotten war zone, rain hammering the canvas overhead, his brother-in-arms clutching a crumpled photo of his own little girl back home. "Watch out for the small ones, Ethan," the man had gasped, blood mixing with mud. "That's the real fight." Ethan had nodded then, sealing the vow with a grip that outlasted the night. He'd carried it like a phantom weight through deployments and discharges, through bar fights and lonely highways, until the road's endless ribbon wore it thin. But seeing Emily here, abandoned in the ruins of her family's unraveling, reignited it like a backfired exhaust. Emily tilted her head, her small fingers twisting the edge of her dress. "Did you have a birthday like this, alone?" Her question hung innocent, piercing the armor of his silence. He chuckled low, rubbing a scarred knuckle. "Worse. Mine came with sand in my boots and echoes of thunder that wasn't weather. But I had my crew even then. They pulled me through." Around them, the Iron Vow nodded in quiet agreement. Marcus, his massive frame folded onto a patch of lawn, cracked open a thermos of hot cocoa he'd brewed on a portable stove, its steam rising like morning mist over desert dunes. "To the little warrior," he toasted, passing a tin cup to Emily, who sipped tentatively, her eyes widening at the warmth chasing away the evening chill. Lena, ever the steady presence, brushed a strand of hair from the girl's forehead, her tattooed arms a canvas of faded ink, symbols of lives saved in chaotic hospital bays. "Your mum's coming back, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups get lost in the storm, but they find their way." Her words carried the weight of experience. She'd seen too many families fracture under the crush of unpaid bills, watched shadows of desperation creep into eyes that once held hope. The tip Ethan received earlier painted a grim sketch. The Harpers drowning in loans from a syndicate masquerading as legitimate lenders, their grip tightening like rusted chains on a seized engine. Whispers of local officials turning blind eyes for kickbacks, justice bent like a warped frame after a crash. As the group shared stories, tales of midnight rides through fog-shrouded canyons, of pulling strangers from wreckage on rain-slick roads, the convoy's engines ticked cooler, their metal hearts slowing in the respite. Tyler, the vet with a limp from shrapnel long extracted, strummed an old guitar he'd fetched from his sidecar, the strings humming a ballad of lost brothers and reclaimed roads. Emily leaned against Ethan's side, her earlier tears dried into faint tracks on her cheeks. For the first time that day, the empty house behind them felt less like a tomb and more like a temporary shelter, its windows dark but no longer mocking. But peace on the pavement was fleeting. Headlights swept the street from the far end, not the warm scatter of neighbors drawn by the song, but sharp, probing beams from a sleek black SUV that prowled like a predator, scenting weakness. The vehicle slowed, tires whispering over asphalt, and Ethan's hand instinctively went to the knife sheathed at his belt, a habit from patrols where trust was a luxury. The driver's window descended with a powered hum, revealing a man in a crisp suit, his face pale and angular under the dash lights, eyes scanning the gathering like a hawk over prey. "Evening," the man called, his voice oily, smooth, laced with false courtesy. "Quite the party for a quiet street. Mind if we join? We're here on business, regarding the property." His gaze locked on Emily, then flicked to the "for sale" sign, a smirk curling his lip. The air thickened, the scent of exhaust from the idling SUV mingling with the lingering sweetness of cake, turning the moment acrid. Ethan rose slowly, his shadow falling long across the curb, the crew shifting behind him like gears meshing into place. Marcus's hand rested on a tire iron, casual but ready. Lena pulled Emily closer, her body a shield. "Business can wait till morning," Ethan replied, his tone even, but edged with the rumble of restrained thunder. "This is family time. Turn around." The man in the suit laughed, a short bark that echoed off the houses. "Family? Cute? But debts don't sleep, Mr. He trailed off, fishing for a name, his eyes narrowing at the Iron Vow patches, glinting in the low light. "Tell the Harpers we're patient, for now, but interest accrues. Like rust on your pretty bikes." The SUV lingered a beat too long, engine purring with menace, before peeling away into the night, taillights fading like retreating embers. Tension uncoiled slowly from the group, but Ethan's jaw remained set, the old promise surging through his veins like high-octane fuel. This wasn't random, it was the first rumble of a larger storm. Corruption's underbelly slithering closer. He'd seen it before, in war-torn streets where power preying on the vulnerable wore many faces. As the guitar resumed its gentle strum, Emily yawned, her head drooping against Lena's shoulder. Ethan knelt again, lifting her effortlessly onto his shoulders for a piggyback ride toward the house. "Let's get you inside, birthday girl. Tomorrow, we make some calls. Real ones." The crew followed, a phalanx of quiet strength, keys jangling as they secured bikes for the night. Whispers among them spoke of mobilizing the full chapter, 50 strong, from dusty garages to cross-state rallies. Not for vengeance, but for the moral reckoning that honor demanded, exposing the vultures, shielding the fragile. Under the star-pricked sky, the engines silent for now, Ethan felt the weight of his vow settle deeper. This girl, this fractured family, it echoed his losses, demanding redemption not in blood, but in unyielding loyalty. The road ahead twisted with shadows of institutional rot, ethical snares that would test every scar. But with the iron vow at his back, he'd ride through, engines roaring for the forgotten, proving that promises, once ignited, burned eternal. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The first light of dawn crept over the rooftops like a hesitant promise, painting the Harper house in soft greys and golds that filtered through dust-moated curtains. Inside, the living room smelled of stale coffee and the faint, lingering sweetness of yesterday's cake, now reduced to crumbs on a side table. Emily slept curled on the worn couch, a patchwork quilt, pulled from a closet by Lena's gentle hands, tucked around her small form. Her breathing was even, the furrow of worry smoothed from her brow for the first time in what felt like ages. Ethan stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the street awaken. The convoy's bikes lined the driveway like silent sentinels, dew beading on their chrome under the early mist. He'd barely slept, his mind replaying the suited man's smirk, the oily threat hanging in the air like exhaust fumes. Marcus lumbered in from the kitchen, 2 mugs steaming in his massive fists, the rich aroma of fresh brew cutting through the morning chill. "She's out cold," he said, handing one to Ethan, his voice a low rumble that matched the big man's frame. "Kid's tougher than she looks. Reminds me of my niece after the fire. Eyes like that, full of questions the world ain't answered yet." He settled into an armchair that creaked under his weight, the ex-firefighter's tattooed forearms flexing as he sipped. Marcus had joined the Iron Vow after losing his station to budget cuts, the kind of institutional betrayal that soured the soul. "That suit last night? He's from the Eclipse group, heard whispers on the rides, shady outfits squeezing folks dry, with badges in their pockets to make it legal." Ethan nodded, the hot liquid burning a path down his throat, grounding him against the surge of old anger. The Eclipse group, a name that evoked shadows in boardrooms, not the open road. His contact's tip had confirmed it. Predatory loans funneled through fake charities, backed by officials who'd traded oaths for envelopes of cash. The Harpers were just one thread in a web spanning the county, families unraveling like frayed ropes under relentless pull. Emily's dad, a mechanic laid off from the local plant, had signed the papers in desperation, only to watch the interest compound like rust eating through steel. Mum's disappearance, likely a flight from fear, or worse, coerced silence. Ethan's vow from that foxhole echoed louder now. Watch for the small ones. This wasn't war, but the battles blurred, power preying on the vulnerable, honor the only weapon left. Lena emerged from the hallway, her riding leathers swapped for a borrowed sweater that hung loose on her wiry build. She'd stayed up checking on Emily, her nurse's instincts overriding the pull of sleep. "No fever, just exhaustion," she reported, rubbing her eyes. "But we need to find her folks. That SUV wasn't a one-off. They'll circle back." Her gaze flicked to Emily, softening. She asked for her mom in her sleep, whispered something about the bad men taking the house. Lena's own scars ran deep, nights stitching up victims of similar squeezes in underlit clinics where justice arrived too late. If at all, the iron vow had become her anchor, a chosen kin that mended what blood couldn't. Tyler joined them quietly, his guitar case slung over one shoulder, the harmonica tucked in his pocket like a talisman. He'd scouted the perimeter at first light, limping slightly on the dew-slick grass. "Neighbors are talking," he said, voice gravelly from the night songs. "One lady saw the Harper's truck get towed last week, impound lot run by Eclipse cronies. Dad's probably there, cooling his heels while they bleed him." The group fell into a huddle, maps unrolled on the coffee table amid scattered crayons from Emily's forgotten play. Plans formed in murmurs, calls to old allies, a ride to the impound, digging into the rot without tipping their hand. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from the chapter's network. "Full crew mobilizing, 50 engines by noon. What's the word?" The decision settled like dust after a skid. "We ride for truth," Ethan said, his words carrying the weight of ceremony. "Not fists first. Expose the chains, break 'em with light." He glanced at Emily, still dreaming, and felt the promise bind tighter, a redemption for his lost brother, for every kid left curbside by the world's indifference. The crew nodded, a silent pact forged in shared glances, the air humming with unspoken loyalty. As the sun climbed, casting slanted beams across the room, Emily stirred, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. "Are you still here?" she mumbled, sitting up, the quilt pooling around her like a cape of forgotten heroes. Ethan knelt, his scarred hand gentle on her shoulder. "Wouldn't leave you hanging, kid. Breakfast first. Pancakes if Marcus can manage without burning the place down." Laughter rippled, light as morning fog, but beneath it, resolve hardened. They moved to the kitchen, the sizzle of batter on a hot griddle filling the space, steam rising in fragrant curls. Emily perched on a stool, watching wide-eyed as Tyler flipped flapjacks with exaggerated flair, the spatula a wand turning worry to wonder. But the idyll shattered with a sharp knock at the door, authoritative, insistent. Ethan froze mid-pour, coffee spilling forgotten on the counter. Through the peephole, two figures in ill-fitting uniforms, local enforcers, badges glinting dully, flanked by another Eclipse suit, this one younger, with a clipboard clutched like a shield. "Open up," one barked, voice muffled but edged with routine menace. "Welfare check, reports of an unattended minor." The crew exchanged looks, tension coiling like a spring-loaded throttle. Lena scooped Emily into her arms, whispering reassurances as Marcus cracked his knuckles subtly. Ethan opened the door a fraction, his frame filling the threshold, eyes steady as a gun sight. "She's attended. Family's here. What's the real play?" The lead enforcer, a paunchy man with a mustache like frayed wiring, peered past him, spotting the bikes outside. "Unlicensed gathering. Potential endangerment. Step aside." His partner shifted, hand hovering near a holster, the air thickening with the scent of authorities' cologne, cheap and overpowering. Ethan didn't budge, his voice low, laced with the calm of storms endured. "Endangerment's what drove her parents away. You know that. Eclipse pulling strings." The younger suit flushed, clipboard trembling slightly, but the enforcer's laugh was hollow, echoing the corruption Ethan had scented last night. "Watch your tone, Ryder. We got orders." But doubt flickered in the man's eyes, a crack in the facade, perhaps a conscience buried under paychecks, or fear of the web they wove. From the kitchen, Emily's voice piped up, small but clear. "They're my friends. They brought cake." The innocence pierced the standoff. The enforcer's bluster faltering as Lena stepped forward, Emily in tow, her nurse's poise a quiet authority. "She's safe. Check the records. I'm licensed caregiver. But if you want real help, look at the loans strangling this family." The words hung, a moral gauntlet thrown, suspense building in the doorway's narrow frame. The enforcer hesitated, glancing at his partner, then the suit, who muttered about protocol and backed toward their cruiser. "We'll be watching," he growled, but the retreat was hasty, tires crunching gravel as they peeled out. The door clicked shut, the house exhaling. Ethan turned to the group, the vow alight in his chest. "That's our cue, time to rev up the truth." As Emily returned to her pancakes, syrup glistening like dawn's hope, the crew prepared to ride, not into violence, but the ethical fray where loyalty faced down deceit. The iron vow would gather, engines thundering toward redemption's horizon, where one girl's birthday sparked a reckoning for the forgotten. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the Harper kitchen into a warm cocoon of sizzling pancakes and murmured plans, the scent of maple syrup weaving through the air like threads of fragile normalcy. Emily giggled as Tyler balanced a flapjack on his spatula, flipping it high enough to catch the light before it landed perfectly on her plate. Her small hands clapped, the sound a bright counterpoint to the tension that still hummed in the adult's veins like an idling engine. Ethan leaned against the counter, wiping syrup from his fingers on a dish towel, his eyes never straying far from the window where the bikes waited, dew now evaporated into faint steam rising from their frames. "We hit the impound first," he said, voice steady as he outlined the route on a crumpled napkin, tracing lines with a calloused thumb. "Tyler's intel puts the truck there, seized on some trumped-up violation. Marcus, you and Lena take point on the records, charm or glare, whatever works." The ex-firefighter nodded, his broad shoulders rolling like pistons, while Lena tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her expression a mix of resolve and quiet fury. She'd seen the aftermath of these seizures in hospital waiting rooms, families shattered, eyes hollow from nights spent bargaining with faceless voices on the line. Tyler slung his guitar case over his shoulder, the instrument's wood scarred from years of roadside jams. "I'll ride scout. Check the back ways. Eclipse has eyes everywhere. Can't let 'em flank us." His limp was more pronounced in the light, a reminder of the shrapnel that had ended his service. But his gaze burned with the same fire that had pulled him through rehab and into the vow's ranks. Emily looked up from her plate, syrup glistening on her chin like morning dew. "Are you going to find my daddy? He fixes cars like you do, Mr. Ethan." Ethan crouched to her level, his leather vest creaking softly, the iron vow patch catching the sun in a glint of silver serpent and chain. "That's the plan, kiddo. And your mum, we'll track her down too. Promises like that don't break easy." He ruffled her hair gently, the gesture carrying the weight of his own unspoken oath, forged in that distant foxhole where loss had carved him hollow. Watching her now, abandoned yet resilient, stirred the embers of redemption he'd long let cool on the roadside. This wasn't just about the Harpers. It was about mending the fractures in a world that chewed up the small and spat out the broken. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, keys jingling like chimes as they stepped outside. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy tang of freshly cut grass from a neighbor's yard, mingling with the oily perfume of the bikes. Emily waved from the porch, clutching a pancake-wrapped farewell, her party dress swapped for one of Lena's oversized tees that draped like a tent. "Be safe," she called, her voice threading worry with trust, a child's faith that pierced deeper than any blade. Engines roared to life in a staggered symphony, deep throbs from Harleys, the higher whine of a customized chopper, vibrating through the pavement and into their bones. Ethan led the way on his Indian chief, throttle twisting smooth as he guided the convoy onto Elmwood Street, the group a rolling thunder of leather and chrome. 20 strong now, with more joining at the chapter's rally point. They cut through the suburban sprawl toward the industrial edge of town. The wind whipped past, carrying whispers of dust and distant rain. The road unspooling like a promise yet to be kept. The impound lot loomed on the outskirts, a chain-link fortress ringed with razor wire that glinted cruelly under the midday sun. Gravel crunched under tires as they pulled up, engines cutting to a collective growl that echoed off the corrugated metal walls. Guards in faded uniforms eyed them from a booth, hands twitching near radios, but Ethan's approach was deliberate. No aggression, just the unyielding presence of men who'd faced worse than bureaucracy. "Here for the Harper vehicle," he stated, handing over a forged claim slip pieced together from chapter connections, his tone even, eyes locking with the lead guards like a challenge unspoken. The man, wiry with a badge that hung crooked, scanned the paper, sweat beading on his brow despite the shade. "This ain't standard. Orders say, hold till cleared." Behind him, stacks of impounded rides rusted in the heat, a graveyard of forgotten freedoms. Marcus dismounted, his bulk casting a long shadow, while Lena flashed her caregiver ID with a nurse's calm authority. "Cleared? For what? Debts that shouldn't exist. We've got a kid waiting, and questions about your boss's side deals." Her words landed soft but sharp, probing the ethical cracks in the guard's facade. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the haze from cooling exhaust pipes, the distant hum of traffic a mocking underscore. The guard hesitated, glancing at his partner who muttered into a radio. Whispers of Eclipse influence slithered through the vows network, kickbacks funneled to officials, seizures padded with fees that vanished into shadows. Ethan's mind raced back to war zones, where checkpoints hid extortion, loyalty the only currency that held. He stepped closer, voice low. "You got a choice here. Help us or watch it all come to light." The truth rides louder than threats. A beat stretched, the sun beating down like judgment, until the gate creaked open with a metallic groan. Inside, they found the truck, dented but intact, keys confiscated in a lockbox that yielded to Tyler's subtle pick from his vest pocket. As they hot-wired it for a test run, the engine coughing to life with a reluctant sputter, a new tip buzzed Ethan's phone. Mom at a rundown motel on the county line, holed up from fear. But shadows stirred, another SUV circling the lot's perimeter, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. The crew rolled out, the truck towed behind Marcus's rig, a victory small but symbolic. Back on the open road, wind rushing like a cleansing breath, Ethan felt the vow pulse stronger. Corruption's web tightened, psychological snares of doubt and delay testing their resolve. But the iron vow pressed on, lealdad in every rev. Justice not in fists, but in the unbreaking chain of honor. Emily's face flashed in his mind, her trust a beacon pulling them toward the moral horizon, where redemption waited in the roar of engines united. They arrived at the motel as afternoon shadows lengthened, the building a sagging relic of faded neon. Its parking lot cracked and weed-choked, the air smelled of stale rain and cigarette smoke, doors peeling paint like old wounds. Ethan knocked on room 12, heart steady despite the unknown. The crew fanned out discreetly, Lena at the ready with medical kit. Marcus a silent wall. The door opened a crack, revealing a woman with Emily's eyes. Hollowed by exhaustion, her hands trembling on the chain lock. "Mrs. Harper," Ethan said softly, no demand in his tone, just the quiet strength of one who'd carried promises across deserts. "Your girl's safe, waiting for you. We ride for family." Tears welled as recognition dawned, the door swinging wide. In that threshold moment, under the flickering vacancy sign, the fractured pieces began to align, not with force, but the gentle insistence of loyalty reclaimed. If this story touched you, hit that like button below. The motel room door swung inward with a hesitant creak, the hinges protesting like a sigh long held. Sunlight slanted through the grimy window, catching dust motes in a lazy dance that illuminated the sparse space. A sagging bed with threadbare sheets, a nightstand scarred by cigarette burns, and the faint acrid tang of despair hanging in the air like exhaust from a stalled engine. "Mrs. Harper," Sarah, as her trembling voice would soon reveal, stood there, her frame slight under a faded cardigan, dark circles framing eyes that mirrored Emily's wide innocence, but were now shadowed by a weariness etched deep. Her hands clutched the doorframe, knuckles white, as if anchoring herself against a gale. "Ethan Caldwell," she whispered, the name slipping out like a recognition from a half-remembered dream. She'd heard of the iron vow through whispers in the mechanic shops where her husband worked, tales of riders who mended more than machines. But seeing them now, Ethan's broad silhouette filling the threshold, Lena's steady gaze behind him, Marcus's quiet bulk like a guardian oak, unraveled her guard. Tears traced clean paths down her dust-streaked cheeks, and she stepped back, gesturing them in with a nod that carried the weight of surrender. The crew entered softly, boots thudding muted on the threadbare carpet. The room's close air pressing against their leathers like an unwelcome embrace. Ethan scanned the space, a single suitcase half-packed by the bed, papers scattered on the dresser. Loan notices with Eclipse Group's logo stamped in bold red, interest rates climbing like vines choking a fence. Sarah sank onto the edge of the mattress, her breath hitching. How did you find me? Emily, she's okay." The question broke, raw and pleading, pulling at the threads of Ethan's old vow, that foxhole promise to shield the vulnerable from the world's relentless grind. "She's tough, like her mom," Ethan replied, his voice a low anchor in the tension. He pulled a chair from the corner, its legs scraping faintly, and sat across from her, elbows on knees, hands open in a gesture of trust forged on endless roads. "Safe at the house, with the crew watching. We got the truck out of impound. Your husband's waiting there, probably cursing the keys by now." Lena knelt beside Sarah, her nurse's touch gentle as she pressed a water bottle into her hands, the cool plastic condensation beading like morning dew. "Drink slow. You've been running on fumes." Sarah's fingers trembled around the bottle, but she sipped, the water steadying her enough to speak. The story spilled out in fragments, each word a pebble dropping into still water, rippling through the room. Debts from the plant closure, her husband's back injury sidelining him, the Eclipse Group's smooth-talking reps offering relief that turned to chains, payments doubling overnight, threats veiled as courtesy calls. "They said the house was collateral," she murmured, eyes distant, as if reliving the moment the first notice arrived, its envelope crisp against the kitchen table. "Then the enforcers showed up, saying we were unfit. I left to draw them off Emily, hid here thinking it'd buy time, but they know everything, local badges in their pocket." Turning a blind eye to the squeeze, Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his ex-firefighter's instincts flaring at the institutional rot she described. He'd seen it in blazes ignored by underfunded stations, lives lost to red tape that favored profits over people. "Names," he rumbled, pulling a notepad from his vest, the paper crinkling softly. "The reps, the officials. We don't swing first, but light exposes shadows." Sarah nodded, reciting details in a hushed litany. A councilman with a taste for backroom deals, an impound manager who'd lost paperwork for a fee. The air thickened with the scent of revelation, mingled with the motel's faint mildew as the crew pieced the web. Eclipse not just lenders, but a syndicate threading corruption through the county's veins, preying on the desperate with the blessing of bent authority. Ethan listened, his scarred knuckles tightening imperceptibly, the foxhole memories surging. His brother's last breath, the vow to protect those the system abandoned. This echoed it too closely, the small ones caught in crossfires, not of bullets, but bureaucracy's cold fire. "You did what you could," he said, meeting her gaze, his dark eyes holding a depth born of losses uncounted. "But running ends here. The vow rides for justice like this, moral, not muscle. We'll gather proof, rally the chapter. 50 strong by dusk, voices louder than engines." Outside, the convoy's bikes idled in the lot, their throaty purr a distant heartbeat. Drawing wary glances from the motel's few occupants, Tyler paced the gravel, his limp a subtle rhythm, phone pressed to his ear coordinating with the full crew, veterans from dusty garages, nurses off shift, mechanics with tools sharper than threats. Lena stayed with Sarah, helping her pack, the zipper's rasp a sound of motion reclaimed. As they loaded the suitcase into the truck's bed, the wind picked up, carrying the sharp bite of approaching clouds, dust swirling like unanswered questions. The ride back unfolded under a sky bruising to grey, the convoy a protective phalanx around the Harper truck, engines harmonizing in a rolling symphony that drowned out doubt. Sarah rode with Ethan, her hands gripping the side mirror, the vibration thrumming through her like a pulse returning. "Why help us?" she asked over the rush of air, her voice cutting through the wind's howl. "Strangers like this. It's not the world I know." Ethan's grip tightened on the handlebars, the leather warm under his palms, chrome flashing in sporadic sunbreaks. Worlds full of chains. Some you see, some you don't. Lost a brother once. Promised I'd watch for folks like you. Iron vows, my family now, chosen tight. We keep words that time tries to erase. The road curved through outskirts, past fields where golden grasses bent like humbled foes, the scent of earth and oil blending into a sensory vow of their own. Back at the house, the reunion unfolded on the porch as afternoon light filtered through gathering clouds. Emily burst from the door at the sound of tires, her small feet pattering across the lawn, straight into Sarah's arms. The embrace was fierce, tears mingling with laughter, the girl's muffled sobs, "Mommy," echoing like a melody resolved. The crew watched from the driveway, a circle of quiet strength, Marcus firing up the grill with a sizzle of burgers that wafted savory promise. Tyler tuned his guitar, notes weaving tentative hope into the air, but shadows lingered. As dusk crept in, Ethan's phone buzzed, a warning from a chapter scout. Eclipse enforcers mobilizing, a roadblock ahead on the moral path, whispers of fabricated charges to discredit the vow. The ethical suspense coiled tighter, dilemmas of exposure versus escalation testing their resolve. Sarah, wiping her eyes, joined the huddle, her voice steadier. "Whatever comes, we're in it. For Emily, for the promise of better." Ethan nodded, the weight settling like a familiar load on the road. Redemption wasn't a destination, but the ride itself. Loyalty's engine driving through corruption's fog, honor the fuel that burned brightest in the dark. As stars pierced the evening veil, the full chapter's roar approached from the horizon, engines uniting in thunderous solidarity. The battle for truth revved closer, a poetic justice where one forgotten birthday ignited a legacy of unbreaking chains. The evening sky hung heavy with the promise of rain, clouds rolling in like uninvited guests over the Harper porch, where the scent of grilling burgers mingled with the earthy petrichor of impending storm. Laughter rippled from the group, tentative at first, as Emily clung to Sarah's side, her small hand tracing patterns on her mother's cardigan. The reunion's warmth wrapped around them like a well-worn leather jacket, but Ethan's gaze lingered on the horizon, where distant headlights flickered like warning signals on a fog-bound road. The Iron Vow's full chapter was en route, 50 riders strong, their engines a gathering thunder that vibrated through the ground, drawing the family closer in shared anticipation. Sarah wiped her hands on a napkin, the paper crinkling softly, her eyes meeting Ethan's across the flickering grill light. "I never thought strangers would stitch us back," she said, voice steadying with each word, the hollows of her cheeks filling with a flush of gratitude. Emily, perched on the porch steps, munched a burger half her size, ketchup smudged like war paint, her earlier fears dissolving into the simple joy of togetherness. Marcus flipped patties with a spatula that gleamed in the dying light, his booming chuckle cutting through the hush. "Strangers? Nah, We're the crew that shows up when the world's checked out. Lena nodded beside him, her tattooed fingers arranging plates with the precision of someone who'd bandaged more than wounds. Souls frayed by the system's indifferent grind. Tyler strummed a soft chord on his guitar, the strings humming low under his scarred fingertips, weaving a melody that spoke of roads reclaimed and vows unbroken. He'd lost count of the chapters in his own story, deployments blending into civilian drifts, each scar a chapter in loyalty's ledger. Now, as the first drops pattered on the roof like hesitant applause, he glanced at Ethan. Scouts say Eclipse is stirring, roadblock on the county line, badges and suits waiting to spin this as a threat, fabricated reports, unlawful assembly, endangerment claims. The words landed heavy, the air thickening with the metallic tang of ozone, suspense coiling in their chests like a throttle held too tight. Ethan pushed back from the porch rail, his boots scraping wood worn smooth by years of footsteps, some fleeing, some standing firm. The foxhole promise echoed in his mind, that rain-lashed night where survival hinged on words exchanged in the dark. Protect the small ones, the overlooked. Sarah's tale of Eclipse's web, loans laced with lies, officials pocketing silence, mirrored the betrayals he'd witnessed in distant sands, where authority bent to shadows for a price. "We don't charge in blind," he said, voice a gravelly anchor. "Gather the proof first. Sarah's papers, the impound logs Tyler lifted. Rally the voices, families they've squeezed, folks ready to speak." His eyes swept the group, landing on Emily, who looked up with a burger-stuffed smile, oblivious to the storm brewing beyond the grill's glow. The crew moved inside as rain began its steady drum on the tin roof, transforming the living room into a war room of sorts. Maps spread across the coffee table, marked with pins where Eclipse's tendrils reached. The impound lot, City Hall's back doors, a nondescript office fronting as a loan agency. Sarah added her fragments, names of reps with oily smiles, dates when threats turned personal, the enforcers who'd lingered too long at their door. Lena transcribed it all, her pen scratching like claws on pavement, her nurse's empathy fueling a quiet rage at the human cost. Families scattered, children like Emily left curbside in the fallout. Marcus paced, his shadow stretching long across the walls, fists clenching at memories of fires left to burn while budgets favored the corrupt. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from the chapter lead, "Riders inbound." But words out, Eclipse tipped the enforcers. "They're painting us as vigilantes, twisting the birthday ride into something sinister." Doubt flickered in the room, a psychological snare tightening. Ride now and risk escalation, or hold for ironclad truth and let the web constrict further. Ethan's jaw set, scars pulling taut, the weight of redemption pressing like a full tank on an uphill climb. This wasn't vengeance. It was the moral fray where honor faced deceit head-on, loyalty the blade that cut through illusions. "We expose them clean," he decided, the words sealing like solder on a frame. Petitions, not punches, voices from the road, amplified till the light blinds them. Outside, the rain intensified, sheets sluicing down the windows in silvery veils, turning the driveway into a mirror of rippling chrome. Headlights pierced the downpour first, dozens of them, converging like a fleet from the mist-shrouded night. Engines roared in unison, a symphony of defiance that drowned the storm's fury, bikes pulling up in precise formation, riders dismounting with the fluid grace of those who danced with danger. The chapter leader, a weathered vet named Jacob with a gaze sharp as switchblades, clasped Ethan's forearm in greeting, water streaming from his beard. Heard the call? 50 souls, ready to roll for the vow. The house swelled with the influx, leathers dripping, voices murmuring plans in low tones. The air rich with wet earth and resolve. Emily peeked from the hallway, wide-eyed at the gathering, Sarah drawing her close with a protective arm. Stories flowed like the rain, a widow saved from foreclosure, a vet pulled from despair's edge, each tale a thread in the iron vows tapestry of chosen family. Jacob unrolled a larger map, highlighting the roadblock, a checkpoint where Eclipse's puppets enforced safety, but really guarded their empire of extortion. "We ride at dawn," he said, "but first we build the case. Witnesses, documents, truth as our shield." As midnight neared, the storm eased to a drizzle, stars peeking through rents in the clouds like hesitant allies. Ethan stepped onto the porch, rain-slicked wood creaking underfoot, the cool mist kissing his face. Sarah joined him, Emily asleep inside, her small chest rising in peaceful rhythm. "This changes everything," Sarah whispered, the words carrying the scent of fresh possibility. "For us. For you." Ethan leaned on the rail, the wood damp against his palms, gazing at the bikes lined like faithful hounds. Promises don't change. They define the ride, lost too much to let chains like Eclipse win. The ethical tension hummed, dilemmas of exposure weighing against the pull of immediate action, but in the quiet, loyalty's engine idled strong. Redemption wasn't a single burst, but the steady rev through shadows, honor the legacy etched in every scar. From the driveway, Tyler's harmonica wailed a lone note into the night, a call to the horizon where dawn and confrontation waited. The iron vow stood united, engines silent but souls aflame, ready to thunder toward justice's poetic dawn, where one girl's forgotten cake sparked an unyielding stand against corruption's tide. Dawn broke with a hesitant glow, the first rays slicing through the dissipating clouds like tentative fingers reaching for the horizon. The Harper driveway hummed with restrained energy, bikes lined in orderly ranks, their chrome surfaces still beaded with last night's rain, reflecting the pale light in shimmering pools. The air carried the crisp bite of wet earth and warmed metal, a sensory prelude to the day's unfolding promise. Ethan stood at the lead, his Indian chief purring softly beneath him, the engine's vibrations syncing with the steady thrum of his pulse. 50 riders flanked him, veterans with eyes like weathered leather, nurses and mechanics bound by choice, not blood. The iron vow, a living testament to loyalty's unyielding chain. Sarah watched from the porch, Emily tucked against her side, the girl's small hand waving a makeshift flag from a napkin twisted around a stick. "Be careful," Sarah called, her voice threading worry with resolve, the reunion's fragility still fresh like dew on grass. Ethan nodded, his salt and pepper beard catching the light, a faint smile cracking his scarred features. "We ride for the light, not the fight. Hold the home front." The foxhole vow echoed in his chest, the distant night's oath to safeguard the overlooked now manifesting in this convoy of conscience. Emily's birthday spark had ignited it fully, transforming a solitary cake into a beacon against the shadows of Eclipse's grip. The engines roared to life in a staggered crescendo, a thunderous wave that rolled through the neighborhood, windows rattling in quiet houses as neighbors peered out, drawn by the spectacle of unity. Marcus revved his softail beside Ethan, the ex-firefighter's bulk steady as an anchor, while Lena rode tandem with a chapter sister, her sharp eyes scanning the road ahead. Tyler led the scouts on a flanking chopper, harmonica tucked away for now, his limp forgotten in the saddle's embrace. Jacob, the chapter lead, signaled from the rear, his weathered hand cutting the air like a blade, forward, measured, true. They poured onto the county road, a serpent of leather and steel, winding through mist-shrouded fields, the wind whipping dust into veils that parted like illusions yielding to reality. The roadblock materialized a mile out, a barricade of cruisers and cones under the watchful eyes of enforcers in starched uniforms, their postures rigid against the dawn's chill. An Eclipse suit stood at the center, clipboard in hand, flanked by the paunchy mustache from the house visit, his earlier bluster now laced with unease. The convoy slowed to an idling growl, exhaust curling like smoke signals of intent, the air thick with the scent of hot tires and tension. Ethan dismounted first, boots crunching gravel, his approach deliberate, hands visible, the vow fanning out behind him in a wall of quiet authority, no weapons drawn, just the weight of gathered truths. "Morning, officers," Ethan said, voice carrying over the engine's low rumble, steady as a heartbeat. He held a thick folder, Sarah's papers, impound logs, witness statements compiled through the night, each page a thread unraveling the web. "We're here to deliver this. Evidence of Eclipse's games, loans twisted into traps, badges bought quiet, no confrontation, just clarity." The suit's face paled, his angular features tightening as he snatched the folder, flipping through pages that detailed kickbacks, fabricated fees, families like the Harpers caught in the squeeze. Whispers rippled through the enforcers, doubt cracking their ranks like fissures in dry earth. The mustached one shifted, hand hovering near his belt, but his eyes darted to the riders, 50 faces etched with scars of service, gazes holding not threat, but unblinking honor. "This is interference," he blustered, but the words faltered, the psychological snare of corruption's exposure tightening around him. Jacob stepped forward. His vets poised, commanding, pulling a recorder from his vest, the night's testimonies captured in raw voices, a widow's tearful account of lost savings, a mechanic's rage at seized tools, Sarah's own measured recount of veiled threats. Interference. This is accountability. Play it for your chief, or we ride to the press. Let the light do the work. Suspense hung in the air, thick as the morning fog lifting around them, the distant call of a crow underscoring the ethical precipice. The suit conferred in hushed tones, sweat beading despite the cool breeze, while a younger enforcer, perhaps one with a conscience not fully rusted, muttered about internal review. Ethan's mind flashed to the foxhole, rain pounding, his brother's grip sealing the promise, protect, endure, stand. This was its echo, not bullets, but the poetic justice of truth unveiled, loyalty's quiet power dismantling deceit without a fist raised. Minutes stretched like taffy, the engines idling in patient harmony until the barricade parted with a reluctant scrape of cones. The suit thrust the folder back, his voice clipped. "We'll investigate. Stand down." No arrests, no clash, just the retreat of shadows before the dawn's relentless advance. The convoy reformed, a victorious rumble carrying them past, the road opening like a healed wound. Cheers rose, muted from the riders, fists pumping in solidarity, the wind rushing past with the tang of triumph and ozone-cleansed air. Back at the house by mid-morning, the full chapter gathered on the lawn, bikes cooling in the sun's warming embrace. Sarah and Emily waited on the porch, the girl's face alight as Ethan swung her up for a victory lap around the yard, laughter bubbling like a freed stream. News spread via chapter networks, Eclipse's local ops unraveling under scrutiny, higher-ups scrambling as audits loomed, the web of corruption fraying thread by thread. No one fell that day. Instead, voices amplified, petitions filed, the moral reckoning rippling outward to other fractured families. Ethan watched Emily chase Tyler's rolling harmonica across the grass, her party dress from days ago now a banner of joy, Sarah's arm around his waist in quiet thanks. The vow, long carried like a phantom load, settled into peace, not erasure, but fulfillment, a redemption woven into the iron vow's eternal chain. Promises survived the storms, family chosen in the roar of engines and the hush of dawn, honor the legacy that outlasted rust and regret. As the sun climbed high, casting golden light over the gathering, the road ahead stretched clear, a testament to action silent yet seismic, one girl's curbside cake, the spark that illuminated justice's enduring flame. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these stories of honor and heart move you, subscribe for more tales from the road, where promises burn bright and loyalty never fades.